just thought it was the worst call of the year, that's all.
We're not going to make promises, but I tell you this.
Yeah, I'm about to get wild. I know that. Let's get wild.
I'll answer anybody's question but yours. But you're an idiot. And really disloyal.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. Christian Guzman alongside Andy Perkler and Steve Haller, where everyone involved watched two horrific football games this weekend.
Actually, today was just the day that Steve's teams decide to not lose to my teams.
This was Andy versus Steve weekend. Well, Sunday in particular, but
yeah. I mean, look, this is when I really do wish that draws were a more common thing because that Steelers and Syracuse could have really used a not loss this weekend, but turns out that that's not how that sport works.
No,
I mean, the Jets could have also. I mean, the Jets could have used the loss.
Oh God, yeah.
Meanwhile,
well, here we are.
My world over here.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening to this probably understands at least half of what we're talking about. Or at least the miserableness that has come with whatever happened yesterday. Not to be confused with the more miserableness that happened the week before.
Yeah. Syracuse football finished the year on a losing streak to end all losing streaks. And just to be like really crystal clear here, the three of us have not only lived through, but have covered and been a member of like the press corps in various iterations rather of some really bad Syracuse football teams. I think we all have a team that we could point to that was the worst Syracuse team that we have covered religiously. And I think what is frustrating about this season is that the team that lost every ACC game after Clemson is probably the worst team that I have watched and had to cover. Now, the team before that Clemson win and during that Clemson win, that's completely different team. But since that game, this has been easily the worst Syracuse football team I've ever seen.
It's tough because yes. Here's what else. The unfortunate thing is, like, we've had past football teams where the starting quarterback has gone down, and it's not been great since. To Andy's point, the team I most distinctly remember is the 2020 team. And yes, that was COVID. And yes, that was, Tommy DeVito goes down, and all of a sudden you're relying on Rex Culpepper to try and do something. But Rex Culpepper at least showed that he could score before the garbage time fourth quarter drive. There wasn't that feeling with any of Syracuse's backup quarterbacks this year.
I would beg to differ on that. Because
I'd be interested to hear your case, because just from what I could see, like once Steve went down, you put someone in there, and I did not have any faith that they would be entering the red zone at any point until the second stringers were in for the opposite team.
I mean, sorry, I figured I'd rip the Band-Aid right off. When you look at what Collins ended up doing, even in that Duke game, like, yes, it was bad, but there were at least flashes of something. We didn't have a single other quarterback that had flashes of anything. And, Collins did go significantly more downhill progressively as the season went on. But there were, like, at the beginning, you could at least see flashes of what the staff had seen bring him in and where they thought he could be. We saw a couple competent drives. We saw, some killer throws. He probably does have the best arm on the team if he, didn't stare at whoever he was throwing it to. But yeah, after that, you have whatever the hell happened with Jakari Williams as your only other upperclassman, and then a boatload of freshmen. And that QB room in general, if Angeli went down, and after we found out what Collins was going to be a trash can fire. When you have to rely on 4 freshmen, one of them being a walk-on lacrosse player, and I don't know why Rich Beelan didn't see the field or anybody else who redshirted. Like, throw him out there at that point.
Apparently, Beelan was banged up. Williams has been in a sling for forever, so that's why we haven't seen Jakari. But apparently, Beelan was banged up as well.
Yeah. It's just eminently frustrating, and I think we can get into at some point the general handling of that position when Steve went down, which I think exacerbated some of the issue you're talking about, Christian, where there wasn't a competent person to put in, but the staff did no favors to anyone they did put in how they put them in.
It especially does a disservice to this Syracuse defense, because this is a Syracuse defense who, I think if there was complementary football in any sort of the imagination, would actually be good and actually have decent numbers and stats to back up the performances that they were giving, especially when you think to the beginning of the Pitt game, the beginning of the UNC game, even the beginning of this Boston College game, the beginning of the Miami game, for God's sakes. That was a defense that, if there was any sort of complementary football, that could have excelled and put up a lot different showings, especially post SMU game. But fortunately, as we all saw, not to be.
Yeah, I think the defense is one where it definitively got better as the season went on. Like, fundamentally, there was a lot better of a lot of different things. I do think that overall, though, when you look at the defense, there was a situation on the defensive side of the ball that's worth going into next year and saying, I don't think any of the upperclassmen really stood out in the way that last year's upperclassmen did, in terms of being a true game wrecker or a game takeover person. Like, look at that, like, talking about the Boston College game, Deuce got matched up on the best receiver for Boston College multiple times and was unable to handle that assignment more often than he was able to. And that's just kind of indicative of the season. And again, when you're getting that many snaps on the field, it's going to be tough. And I think the season is always going to have an asterisk on the defensive side of the ball, just because of how unlevel things were towards the back half of the season. But I still look at this team and defensively think that I understand the conversations around wanting to maybe move on from Elijah Robinson, because we have now 2 years of a body of work where the defense has continued to really struggle. I'm not in that camp, but I'm understanding of the perspective of, like, look, there's not really a whole lot of good to take away from this defense if they're not getting turnovers. And last year's team obviously had some amazing turnover luck in terms of fumbles, but also just created a lot more chaos with a much stronger front 5-6, and was able to turn that into a lot more interceptions than this year's team even had the opportunity, to do it if they weren't on the field as much as they were. So it feels like obviously everybody gets an F. You all get an F when you go 3-8, 3-9 with the way that the season ended there. But the defense does feel to me like somehow an incomplete grade, if only because no defense is going to look good in that situation.
And I think, Christian, you would have heard it at the presser. Dino, Jesus, wow. Oh God, I'm sorry, Fran.
What a Freudian slip right there.
Oh, that hurt to say. I'm just having flashbacks to some of those bad seasons we had there. No, Fran mentioned it in the press conference where, even Deuce and Grant and, like, even the guys that are back on the field aren't recovered. And they like there's guys that have been carrying knocks all year, and that happens every year to every team. But like, I mean, if you look at who's been out for the year or for a good chunk of the year, like there's a lot of guys that are integral to this team that have been, either in the trainer's room or like hobbled but out there the whole season. I mean, just out this week, Chase Simmons, Rashard Perry, Emmanuel Ross, Derek McDonald, Tyshawn Russell, Yassine Willis, just on the out list. Jaden Hart, who I forgot existed because he has either been hurt or not missing in action forever. Malachi James was down. Like, did Delorier?
Delorier played.
Well, he played, but he's been kind of listed on that line for a while.
Some guy named Steve was also out.
Well, yeah, I think that one that one goes without saying, but
it's like how the Celtics keep posting Jason Tatum out on their social media pages for every single game.
Yep. So I don't know. It seems
both Achilles injuries, ironically.
Oh yeah, there you go. It just seems like a weird situation all around for this year, and I mentioned it in the Slack, and I talked about it in our Discord, which if anyone, wants any live discussion on the game, feel free to join that. There's always a wild discourse going on in there, but I don't think if the highs weren't as high, a 4 or a 3-9 campaign this year would not have felt nearly as bad. If we hadn't seen Angeli lead the country in rushing over the first 4 weeks, if we hadn't have gone down to Death Valley and taken down, even though it's a, whatever Clemson is, still Clemson in Death Valley, like if those things don't happen, this is like, okay, it's a blip in the radar. It is what it is. There's been a lot of injuries. Like, it happens. But we saw what it could be, and that's half of the problem we're faced with in this this situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out, Steve, because I think that there's a lot of frustration right now with and obviously basketball doesn't help with that, and we'll get to that side of the coin in a little bit.
We got a lot to cover because we've got basketball and we've got signing day we've got to talk about. So
yeah. So I think the disappointment is a big key part of this, if only because for better, and we talked about this last season when Fran was being Fran, that works really well when you're winning. But when you're losing, you find out how many people are ready to use that against you. And I think that Fran being so outspoken and Fran wanting to put Syracuse in national conversations, when you go 3-9, the national conversation immediately turns pretty negative on you. And it's going to be a tough one to recover from, if only because, look, I had some people texting me who were at the game that they saw Angeli wasn't in a boot. This is the same week that Fran was on the radio show with Matt Park and was showing video of Angeli working out in the boot. There's no guarantee that Angeli is ready to go by spring in any meaningful practice participation. There's no guarantee of that, which is why you have Fran. And again, kind of, looking ahead, Fran's talking about bringing in 2 full-time quarterbacks to this locker room. There's just so much uncertainty right now, where last year there was so much like, oh yeah, just repeat the recipe. And at the beginning of the season, we saw that recipe was being repeated. And then all of a sudden someone throws, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a really disgusting vegetable or something into your finely cut thing. It's that undercooked lamb and leek thing from the menu. It's just terrible and gross and ugly. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, no, this is bad now. But at the end of the day, like, look, it sucks to say, like, hey, we have to write off a season for Syracuse, but like to me, this season is the biggest write-off that you can have. What happens next year will be infinitely more important, if only because we'll learn how Fran bounces back from something like this, and also we'll see if where Fran's true level is. Is it closer to the 10-win season, or is it closer to a 3-win season? And if the answer is a 7-win season, then yeah, that's about as good as you're going to get with Syracuse football, which is what we've been saying for the last 3-4 years that we've been doing this show.
Well, one of the big things also is that and this is me being in a pro sports kind of mind, is that you need to take some of these seasons to develop players. And that's what Fran has preached this season has been. It's been a development year. But at some point, especially in just the nature of college, at some point it becomes a what have you done for me lately type of situation. And as unfortunate as that is, I don't want it to be like that for college sports. In pro sports, it's a lot easier. You see teams tank all the time, and fans are much more accepting of, okay, it's a lost season, fine, let's try again next year. In college, you don't have that afforded luxury, especially nowadays with people realizing how, for lack of a better term, easy it is to acquire talent and to accelerate a rebuild in a way that is unprecedented. And I think a lot of Syracuse fans got a taste of that last year. And because of that, I think a lot of Syracuse fans were expecting something like that again this year. And yes, it looks like that potentially through the first 4 games. And so I think it just got a lot clouded for fans seeing like, hey, this is not the team we thought we were getting. And it can be very easy to forget, like, hey, there's a lot of pieces that weren't there for one reason or another, whether it be the injury or just talent acquisition in the portal. That being said, this is the team that you put together still. And whether it is because, freshmen or not, fans are still going to expect you to perform and win immediately. And that's just the nature of college football fans. So unfortunately, that's where this year takes a tumble for this Syracuse administration. And to be fair, Fran has said, hey, I've kind of learned now, especially with nowadays, the roster construction of how he wants to build. Because last year he was very much, hey, I'm going to build through high school and I want to build through my high school recruiting. He said at the end of the presser, now he realizes that he's got to take a different position in that sense of the roster building, especially in certain positions. And you could guess that one of those is the quarterback. And
yeah, he flat out said he's bringing in 2. He wants to look for 2 in the portal.
Mm-hmm. And he said he's going to do that and also try and build around the offensive line a bit more, which I know Steve really likes.
Won't complain about that. The other thing, I guess when you look at roster construction, quarterback in the portal makes a lot of sense to grab because you can work more with a veteran quarterback and raw freshman receivers with talent than you can the other way around. And if you can grab those skill level guys, those like true skill position guys out of high school at a high clip, then, plug and play them with a veteran quarterback, even if he's, not a veteran on your squad. That doesn't seem like a bad way to look at it. And it seems kind of where Fran's alluding to how he wants to start building this.
Yeah, I think that this is actually probably a good segue here to kind of talk about what's next for the football team. And there's whether or not you're following the Lane Kiffin saga, the reason that the Lane Kiffin saga is a thing is because of the new college football rules for this offseason, which some of you who are listening might not be firmly aware of. Early signing day is this week. Early signing day has become incredibly important because of the availability of those players to then enroll in January and be on campus in January, which is Syracuse under Fran Brown. Syracuse has almost exclusively used the early signing day to fill their entire class and get everybody onto campus if possible. And then the transfer portal, there are no longer two portals. So last year, Syracuse was able to work the second portal to land Steve Angeli after they didn't like what they saw from Ricky Collins in spring. This year, that's not going to be the case. There's only going to be one portal window. It's basically going to be all of January. The portal essentially will open, even though it won't open now, you'll hear players declaring for the portal. You'll hear about players entering the portal. Portal will open in a couple of weeks, basically once every school semester is over, and will run until the last school semester starts, which is the end of January. But for Syracuse purposes, they'll need to get people in the portal basically around the same time that the national semifinal or the national championship is taking place if they want to get them enrolled by the time that classes start. So basically, we have a month right here for Fran to build this roster. We haven't heard a whole lot on the portal side, aside from Fran saying that he wants to go out and get those two quarterbacks, as Steve mentioned. The focus right now is going to be on National Signing Day, or early signing day, I should say. Right now, 24/7 has Syracuse as the 26th best recruiting class in the country for 18 or for high school players. And obviously a big part of that is Calvin Russell, who I'm going to believe it when I see it, but somehow he is still committed to Syracuse.
Well, him and his teammate, who are the 1 and 2 currently as far as rankings, Tadarius Hughes, another wideout out of Northwestern High School in Miami area. I was like, I don't know what town it's actually in, but I mean, Russell as a 5-star and Hughes as a high 4 are like that. That is a 1-2 that, as dumb as it sounds, could help in his recruiting of a QB out of the portal too. Like, hey, we've got guys that are willing to come here and want to, buy in. You get them to sign, and you're kind of looking at something a little bit a snowball that could catch fire, if we want to talk about former coaches.
Well, another name to remember too is that Amari Go is part of this class as well, who is a 4-star wide receiver out of the Richmond, Virginia area. This class is loaded up on the offensive side of the ball with some big boys in there as well. So Alexander Haskell out of the Philadelphia area is a 4-star defensive lineman. We've got Jarius Rogers out of Orange Park, Florida, who's a high 3-star edge. JoJo White, who's a interior lineman. There's Walt Frazier, another defensive lineman. I think it's really safe to say that Fran has identified 2 areas upon which he feels that Syracuse needs more depth and more skill. And those are the trenches and the wide receiver room. And this class is certainly strong in both of those areas.
And mea culpa on my part. Hughes is a safety. I was thinking of Go when I was thinking of the other wide receiver.
Gotcha.
Remember also Haskell is a Penn State flip from the whole James Franklin thing. And to you, Steve, Miami Northwestern is indeed in Miami. So
well, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not like
name.
Yeah, it's not like some other interesting things in naming conventions. So to give you guys the exact dates, the portal for football opens on January 2nd this year, and it will close on January 16th. So it's only a 15-day window.
That's even worse than the Premier League.
Yes. So, but what does that mean? It only means in that window is, and also if you have a team in the and if you have a team that goes to the CFP final, those team players in those programs will have a 5-day window after the CFP finals to transfer as well. But what does that mean? Remember from last year as well. So for those who don't remember, that 15-day window is only for players to officially enter. It's not a exclusive like in the Premier League or in soccer or even like trade deadline. It's not like, okay, once 6 p.m. on January 16th comes, You can't transfer anymore. You can't like commit to a school. That's what I should say. Players can still enter their names into the transfer portal only up until the 16th of January. After that date, teams can still contact players who have officially entered the transfer portal in that time. And so you might see commitments later than the 16th because those players had entered the portal before the cutoff date. So
Right.
just because a team hasn't signed a player yet, like after the 16th, doesn't mean they can't sign it. As long as that player has entered their name into the transfer portal before the 16th, they are eligible to be picked up by a school.
Okay.
It's just that the players have to make that decision.
Right.
The negotiation part of it isn't cut off necessarily because of the new window.
And just for some Syracuse specifics here, because obviously we kind of mentioned this, spring ball is obviously massive for especially underclassmen, but in Syracuse's situation where you have some holes that you'd like to bring people into, they need to be enrolled at Syracuse for the spring semester in order to participate in spring ball. For Syracuse, the first day of spring class of classes for the spring semester is Monday, January 13th. But the add deadline, aka the last day that you can theoretically add a class and be a registered student, is Tuesday, January 21st. So again, to Christian's point there, like there is a 5-day gap between when the quote unquote transfer portal closes and when Syracuse can theoretically add players to have them eligible to participate in the spring in spring ball. So again, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Fran plays this, because just seeing how these dates are lined up, my assumption is that the team is going to make sure that all 26 guys in the class of 2026 class sign on early signing day. They then evaluate which players are leaving in the portal, try to address those gaps as quickly as possible through the transfer portal. And whatever they can't do, they scramble, because I believe National Signing Day is still in middle of February. So you have about a month to do recruiting to fill in some depth on that roster that you would have normally waited to do until the second transfer portal window.
I'll be curious with this window, how this all plays out, in the sense that is it going to be something where we see a bunch of people, even if they're likely to return, if we see a ton of names get tossed in there, because, and especially with someone like Fran, who is very open about, or seems to be, I've never sat down and had a chat with the guy, but he seems to be very open with, talking to his players and how things are going to be portrayed and where they sit on the team. Is this going to be something where we see a bunch of guys go in, and then as he reevaluates things, he has talks with people and, says, hey, pull back? Because we've seen that in the past. Last winter, we had a couple of people that jumped in and then, dipped their toes in and then came back out. So Josh Miller
Yeah.
included, I know that. I can't remember who else, but there was
Anwar
2 or
Sparrow
3.
did that also.
Anwar Sparrow, yep.
Yeah.
And for you, Andy, normal, regular National Signing Day for football is February 4th.
February 4th. Okay. So yeah, you still, there are weeks, we are measuring times in weeks, not hours, which is good enough for this staff that'll probably be working around the clock for the month of January on roster development, if I had to guess. Which is, again, like, this is interesting. And for anybody who might be wondering why we're spending so much time talking about this and why we're interested in this is the first year of this system. So college football continues to not be normal for more than 6 months at a time and continue to change something every 6 months.
6 hours.
Fair.
AKA the last 24 hours.
Yeah, actually, that's the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about football here with you guys. What Christian is alluding to has been some of the craziest coach movement that we are starting to see unfold. There is still so much more to happen in terms of vacancies and staff filling. I think that there is an expectation around Syracuse, and it certainly seems that both coordinators are going to be returning to Syracuse. I have not seen nor heard of any assistants leaving at this point in time. I have not seen or heard any, hey, this guy is probably not coming back due to the performance of this season. Obviously, there's a lot of movement and change that can happen. And obviously, if, say, Elijah Robinson gets offered a head coaching job at USF, I don't know if he would say no to that. But there's a lot of dominoes still to fall. But the coaching staff cohesion going into this crucial period of time, the fact that there's no news is probably good news, but that doesn't mean that there won't be news for the rest of the winter.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dale Williams is sacrificial lamb that ends up getting canned. Just based on the offensive line performance, especially after who they brought in, the size of who they brought in, and the pedigree of who they brought in. Williams is going to be safe, if nothing else, for his recruiting prowess. You've got what? Let me pull that up quick because I'm right next to the page. Joe Schaefer at defensive back. I don't really know hide nor hair there. They just got Gaddis on the full-time on the staff, so I'm pretty sure he's staying. Nunzio, Robert Wright as the linebackers coach and co-DC, Michael Johnson as the co-OC and quarterbacks coach, and Ricky Brumfield as the special teams coordinator. There's nothing that jumps out at me as to who would, step on the grenade outside of Williams, but any thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, that's probably the only name I'm highly thinking of, especially just because from what I've seen just in general glancing at recruiters, it's a pretty even split amongst the other coaches about who players are shouting out in terms of recruiting from Syracuse and whatnot. So I think that's maybe the big change that I'd say. Maybe the only other one is, do you bring someone else to coach the quarterbacks if you don't trust Michael Johnson Sr. to do that, even though he's got a ton of experience doing that? Maybe do you just need a new voice in that room as well? And by new voice, I mean another new voice.
QBs, didn't he?
I'm sorry?
He just got moved to
exactly,
QBs.
yeah. And so maybe it's even it might just be the need of having yet another new voice, because yes, he's been working with the tight ends, but he's also been co-OC for a bit as well. So he has some say in offensive structure and whatnot. So maybe is it just time for another new voice there? Maybe, because and it might. It's not so much and we saw this when Fran made the coaching changes earlier this month. It's not so much necessarily sometimes performance that is driving these decisions. It maybe is just a shakeup that you need to have someone new in the room to motivate the players and whatnot. So it may not necessarily be a performance thing as to why a change is made.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, especially when we look at, we talked a little bit about signing day. There are a couple of quarterbacks committed to the class so far. I think one is technically an athlete, so it'll be interesting to see if he ends up playing quarterback or not. But I would assume that if you're talking about bringing in two quarterbacks via the portal, having Angeli around, bringing in another two via early signing day, you're expecting. I mean, I think we all know Ricky Collins is probably entering the portal. I think that there's speculation around Luke Carney entering the portal after he decided to redshirt this season. You could be looking at an entirely new room. And Christian, to your point, it might be a situation where Fran and Jeff Nixon just decide, look, let's just start over from scratch rather than try to have any sort of continuation with what was the mess that was this year. So again, Fran's pretty cagey about this, but what I do think, if you are interested in this, one of the things that I really appreciated about Fran last year was that for National Signing Day, it was the GM and every single assistant coach who had contact with a recruit answering questions. And Fran was fairly absent from all of that conversation. It was really one of the only times that you got to hear from a lot of the other members of the staff. So that might also be, when they do the big press conference and they start talking about kids, that might also give us a little bit of a clue as to if there's going to be any staff movements, or if there's going to be any restructuring happening based off of how they're introduced, or some tidbits that come out of that day. So it's football doesn't stop. There's optimism here. I'm more excited for the portal than I am of the recruiting class, just mostly because a lot of these guys are probably going to be depth options at first. But again, we saw this year, like some 3-stars just came in and were on the 2 deep by spring.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing, is especially a place like Syracuse, you can find those diamonds in the rough. A P4 school that isn't the creme de la creme, some of those guys that got overlooked, you've got time to get on. You also have the Canadian pipeline. I can't remember if I think we grabbed at least 1 or 2 from there this year, or did we?
I don't think so. I think we've got a lot of
7 that I was thinking of. Like, I remember seeing a recent Canadian commit, but it's just got a different feel to it coming off of this weird mess of a year. Like, I know a lot of people are down on it. I'm not really that down on the program right now. And I think, Andy, you kind of alluded to this weird sense of optimism. And I know I'm always the overly optimistic one, but like, there seems to be some blocks that could be built on here rather than it being a, trash can fire coming out of the, Schaefer era or the Robinson era. Like, the cupboards aren't bare. There's young coaches that are also learning along with these young players. I think, and I may eat my words if we go 3-something again next year, but right now, my gut says we're at least going to turn this around and into a sensible season next year.
Yeah, I think that no matter what, Syracuse is going to end up being more competitive next year in all their games. I am intrigued to kind of, again, we thought that this year...
Point of order. You actually cannot be less competitive. No, that's true. Christian was about to do what I was going to do, which is it's funny because we played the schedule game. We're like, oh my gosh, the schedule is so hard, and the ACC decided to just become a crabs in a barrel.
Shout out to Virginia Duke ACC championship game.
Yeah, speaking of which, we're going to have one of them on the schedule.
Have we just become the conference in general has just become the favorite of the Sickos committee, haven't we?
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, that BC win actually did matter.
Yes.
Did
So
that end up coming into play?
Yes, it ended up being the tiebreaker because SMU losing meant that Duke got in, which also a reminder, and like this is some true sicko stuff here. If Duke wins, the ACC is going to get shut out of the playoff.
Absolutely.
100%.
And if ACC gets shut out of the playoff, like this schedule might not matter next year because the ACC might not exist next year. Clemson and FSU are going to use that as an excuse to leave the ACC as soon as possible if the ACC misses out on this year's playoff.
And the
Even
old
though
guys
I
finally
got
going
on
to
the playoff is because of their ineptitude.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and the olds are finally going to get their wish, and the Big East will finally return.
Oh yes, absolutely. At that point, we're going to pull a full. Speaking of which, like the schedule is a quarter of what UConn does. Shout out UConn on the schedule. Just play the worst teams and stack wins. And then maybe your coach can go to Colorado State. The New Hampshire, Toledo, UConn to open the season. Well, I guess not open the season, but the 3 games that actually have dates are pretty nice. I'm not going to lie. I don't love the Notre Dame game, but obviously that'll be this year will be a sellout for season tickets at Syracuse because everyone will want tickets to the Notre Dame game.
Well, and that Notre Dame game is an asterisk too, isn't it? Like, could that possibly be moved based on? Wasn't there some weird stuff that came out with Notre Dame scheduling like last week? That made that a question, or was that 27?
I think it's 27.
Okay.
But yes, this might be the last Syracuse Notre Dame game for a minute. Which, oh man, I'm so upset about that.
Notre Dame is very upset about that.
Yes, actually, true.
Yeah, after the worst loss that we've had since my alma mater beat Syracuse back in 1893.
Yeah, it turns out also the Union Syracuse head-to-head is actually pretty interesting. Union had a nice little run there for a minute.
Back in the late 17th century or 19th century, we did gangbusters against Cuse.
The road games being BC, UNC, Pitt, and UVA. That's not the worst that you could have. I like that the tougher games are going to be at home. Not going to lie. Cal, Clemson, Louisville, SMU, Notre Dame at home. I'd rather them come to the Dome than have to go to any one of those locations. Although we're definitely not sneaking up on Clemson this year.
No, but if Clemson's any shade of what they were this year, then we don't need to sneak up on anyone.
That is true. And as you can probably, if you're watching us on the live stream or watching us on the YouTube replay, you might notice most of these games are TBD because of the new ACC scheduling system. Woohoo! Yeah. 9 games conference schedule coming soon. I believe that this year is 2026 is going to be the last year where you technically have 3 non-conference games. Obviously, Syracuse got bailed out because Notre Dame is part of that ACC scheduling agreement. So it is a non-conference game for Syracuse, but essentially an ACC mandated one. Yeah, like, look, I think that this schedule points to if Syracuse is a good team, they go bowling. And I don't think that there's anything that, to me, says Syracuse can't be a good team next year.
No. I don't disagree.
It will, again, turn to a lot of what the 2010s was, which is injury luck as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that said, a lot of those freshmen that got time and a lot of those freshmen that were behind, like, this is still a young roster.
Yeah.
And that experience and building that depth, like that, I don't know if we'll see it pay off in 26 or if half them stay on the roster because modern college football. If we can continue to build that depth, that drastically changes the outlook in a couple of years.
Here's what I'll say also, because Steve will love this. The last 2 times that Syracuse has had a healthy offensive line, and a healthy, consistent offensive line, was 2024 and 2018.
Yep.
What happened both of those years?
Good things.
10 wins. Also, what happened both of those years? The same starting quarterback for every single game.
Now, correlation doesn't mean causation, but in this case, I believe correlation directly ties in.
So the fact that Fran has also said, like, hey, like, I need to build around offensive line as well, is big. That's going to be his big. Other than the 2 quarterbacks, I think that's his biggest task in the transfer portal this year. Because if you pick up a good offensive line, you should, at the very minimum, go bowling with this schedule.
Yeah. Agreed. Speaking of terrible schedules, Syracuse basketball, man. The week, we knew that this stretch was going to be hard for those that have subscribed to our podcast. I was able to put out a quick Vegas preview episode with my friend Bennett of Swish Analytics, who ended up being pretty spot on. Said Syracuse was going to get 1 out of 3 chances to have a resume building win. The other 2 games were probably not going to be that case. And they did have a shot. It just wasn't in the game that any of us expected. The legs then completely fell out from under them in the next 2 games. And Syracuse now got a few days off before I believe the game is tomorrow, ACC SEC Challenge, where Syracuse will take on Tennessee, who ended up defeating Houston, the team that Syracuse almost beat, if they could hit a goddamn free throw. Guys,
you've never watched a Syracuse basketball team before?
Look, I have watched a Syracuse basketball team before. I have never seen a Syracuse basketball team shoot that badly from the line holistically. I've seen players shoot that badly from the line. I've seen Baimu Sakita take a lot of free throws, but the rest of the team, hit their free throws. But that was probably one of the worst free throw shooting endeavors that I have ever seen.
No offense to the guy, because the rest of his game is actually done very, very well for Syracuse. But where does William Kyle rank on your worst free throw shooters?
Is there anyone else in discussion?
Me at age 12. That's the list.
I watched him miss rim on 2 in one game.
It's somewhat fortunate because the rest of his game has actually been very, very decent for Syracuse. And in some cases, elite for Syracuse. It's just that he cannot hit a free. It would be an interesting contest between him and Shaq for free throw shooting.
So the worst Syracuse free throw percentage in history was the 87-88 team at 60%. We are currently at 56.1%.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that we were somehow worse. Oh my God.
Not great right now, Bob. Not great.
that hurt.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the thing is this team, and especially you could tell after that dogfight against Houston, which to me, as dumb as it sounds, even coming off 3 losses this week, this showed me that they have the talent and they can play with who they can play with. Like anybody in the country at this point, they can match up with at least in a one-off. Kansas, they played strong for a half and change, and then the legs just gave out and also couldn't hit a free throw. And then Iowa State, they played strong for a half, and then the legs gave out and also couldn't hit a free throw. There seems to be a recurring theme here. I don't know. It's weird. Like watching them take that team to overtime and come so close. And to be fair, could have won it in regulation, could have done a lot of things. Didn't do any of those things. It's a weird team that's talented and still needs to find themselves.
Yeah. I think what the positives that I'm choosing to take away from the Vegas thing are that, one, Kyan Anthony had probably his 3 worst games as a Syracuse Orange in back-to-back-to-back games. And you hope that he plays any bit better in the rest of the games from here on out. And that's a boost to the offensive side of the ball. And again, you didn't have Donnie Freeman, who ends up being both legs that you can throw on there and ends up being a bit of a spark offensively, just in brute force, the same way that Kyle kind of was. Again, who you didn't have for those 3 games. The second positive is that, man, this team can play defense. And if you can play defense at that high a level in college basketball, you're probably going to be in every single game. My concern is that going into this, I didn't think Syracuse really had any true scoring punch that they could rely on in a close game. And I came out of this week going, there is literally no one on this team that I would trust with the ball in the final 10 seconds of a game. It's just going to be whoever's open, and it's a hope and a prayer from there. As you saw in that Houston game, that last possession was legitimately no one wanted to take that shot. No one felt comfortable taking the shot, and the result was a stuffed layup at the rim, because that was pretty much the only thing that Syracuse felt comfortable even attempting in that situation.
You're not going to win too many games when Tyler Betsy is your leading scorer.
No.
Fair.
And I think the other part that I think is really interesting here, the ACC is not going to be good this year. Duke is going to be elite.
Oh boy.
But everyone else is going to be various no, I don't think anyone else is going to probably be a top 5 seed in the ACC. Duke is probably going to be that only team. This seems like a dumb year where Syracuse, if they can get their crap together after this Tennessee game, if you get rolling enough and you start getting in some momentum, you can probably work your way into a top 4, top 3 position in the ACC this year just by stacking wins against teams that are meh to bad. And again, probably play Duke and lose by 20, but like end up being third in the conference just by stacking wins by playing fairly fundamental. I would be happy with that, even if it's ugly. Like, I just want to see progress. I just want to see progress this year.
The tough thing is, and a lot of people have pointed this out, is that so after this Tennessee game, you have your warm-up games. You have 5 more non-conference warm-up games at home. After that, you have a quote-unquote relatively easier ACC schedule where you're playing some really bad teams up until Boston College. But then after that, each team is actually half decent.
Yeah.
So once you hit the end of January, you get no breaks if you're Syracuse.
You get no breaks, but you don't get too many peaks.
This is true, yes.
Like everyone is average to above average, and there's no drop off, but there's no like, holy shit, we can't win that game.
Yeah, you're only playing Duke once.
Right.
And is that game at Cameron Indoor or is that at the Dome?
That's at Cameron Indoor.
That's a loss.
Lose by 20. It's fine.
That's a loss, especially because that game is on a Monday.
Oh yeah, we can't. We might as well not fly to that. It's fine. Run the extra practice. We should be okay.
Yeah, I'm. Again, this might just be me trying to drink the Kool-Aid as much as I can, but I came out of this week weirdly optimistic for Syracuse just because the defense was so strong. My concern was that the blowouts, you look at the score line, you look at the blowouts, and you say, oh, this team just is the same thing as last year where they're disorganized on defense. They don't know what they're doing. No, they do play, though, and I do think that this is the concern that we should take away from here. They play really physical and they play really up-tempo, so they need the bodies. And we saw what happened when you didn't have Donnie Freeman as an option off the bench. This is
like Syracuse football.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar philosophy. The legs are going to be, as Christian was kind of talking about, when you get to that stretch, even though there are no peaks, you're going to be playing 40 minutes a night. There's no play 20 and get 10 off because the game's out of hand. And the way that Syracuse is choosing to play this year is one where those are going to be 40 hard minutes. Which again, as a fan, I enjoy watching. It's exciting and it's a type of basketball that I can get really behind. As someone who's trying to make sense of this and talk about it intelligently, I'm also like, oh dear God, this has the recipe to get out of hand pretty quickly if enough injuries pile up to the wrong people.
It's true. And that's going to happen anywhere. But if you look, right now, our losses are to the number 3 team in the country, the number 15 team in the country, and Kansas, who's probably going to crack the 25 soon, if not next week or this week. We don't have a bad loss.
The unfortunate thing is the way that college basketball is nowadays, you do not have a good win.
True.
And with the way that the NCAA tournament is decided, you need a good win. It's not like in college football where, in college football, when you're thinking about rankings and such like that, you're looking to avoid bad losses.
Right.
But with how much emphasis is posted on the net, you need the big win to show the committee that, hey, we actually deserve to be here.
Right. Well, on the flip side, we have, a couple of days off for a break to face this Tennessee team that, yes, they knocked off Houston, but then they lost to Kansas, who we also showed we can play with. I'd be very curious tomorrow what happens. Sorry.
And especially with just how the level of the ACC is, quad 1 and quad 2 wins in the ACC are so hard to come by.
Right.
So you need to have those big. This is your last chance to get something that for sure will be a quad 1 win, since that is something that, when you look at Syracuse resumes in the past, has been an easy reason to leave Syracuse out of the discussion of any tournament discussion, is that they do not have that quad 1 or quad 2 big win.
Yeah, I mean, who did we grab in this year's schedule that even would be in that vein?
I that's what I mean with the ACC. Like, when you're looking at the ACC in general, there are very few teams that even crack the conversation of could be quad 1 quality. You're hoping.
Louisville.
UNC doesn't look like they have it. Louisville, you're hoping, like, you're basically looking at Louisville. I think UNC is another one. Clemson, and Clemson is like kind of like UNC, where like we know what they are, and they're not going to really get any higher than what they are, which is like that second tier. You're hoping Louisville can grow into it. You're hoping that NC State can maybe grow into it, but NC State already has 2 losses on the season as well. And then after that, it's like Virginia, who's kind of trying to do the Syracuse thing, where they're gaming the schedule. They're, just trying to stack as many wins as possible. And they're still only in the low or high 30s on KenPom. Like, there's just not, it's not great.
So Duke right now is the number 1 team in the net.
Yeah.
You would assume that also means they're the number 1 team in the ACC in terms of the net. The next highest team is Clemson at 25. Then it's Louisville at 28. Then it's UNC at 32.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Clemson, we get at home. Coming off of playing Stonehill College.
Woo!
To be fair, until I read that, I didn't know they existed.
And remember, if you're looking for those quad 1 wins, games at home, it only qualifies for teams up to 30 in the net. And so right now, in terms of home games, right now Clemson and Louisville are right now the only other teams right now that are in the 30s in the net. And guess what? That first game after the stretch of the 5 non-conference games, Clemson at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, we only get Louisville once, so of course we don't get a chance at doubling up that.
Yeah, and luckily that Louisville game
away.
Yes, so that's quad 1, unless Louisville falls off the map, like Andy predicts. That's going to be quad 1.
That UNC game at home, who knows where they're going to fly by then?
Yeah.
If Pitt somehow maintains course, that could technically become a quad 1 game.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that this is where, when I kind of led off this conversation, man, if the floor to be the second or third best team in the ACC is to be a 30-ish, 40-ish net team, like, Syracuse can do that. They haven't done it under Autry. Like, that's, to be very clear, they have not done that yet under Autry. But what I saw this past week from Syracuse said that they absolutely could get there. Like, I see a pathway where that happens.
To be clear, Syracuse right now in the net is 134.
Yeah, I forgot that the net is really mean when you lose games.
Yes.
133, please.
Okay, I'm looking at a different one than you are then.
Yeah,
Either
this
way,
is why I stick.
Like, stupid vein of like, wow.
Yeah, not great.
Currently, the Big East is above the ACC in terms of conference net rankings.
That's fun.
Look, we said it at the top. Maybe it's just time for the ACC to collapse and the Big East to reform. Who knows what'll happen then? Everybody over the age of 70 has been dreaming of this day. Might happen sooner than you think. Oy vey. Well, gents, we were able to fill an hour. We're back at it. This is going to be a crazy week. This is going to be a crazy month, crazy 2 months. We'll actually talk about basketball a little bit, as you can tell now that football is firmly in the rear view in terms of games being played. But yeah, you know where to find us, Disloyal Idiots. Thank you very much if you're watching us live on our live stream. We really appreciate the support. Make sure that you like and subscribe and get notified when we go live next time. We do this every Sunday night-ish at 8-ish, talking all things Syracuse sports. Make sure that if you are listening to this on your podcast platform of choice, thank you so much for listening to the Fans First Sports Network. Make sure you like and subscribe. Helps us trick the AI into expanding the Ottoman Empire. And thank you so much to our sister site, Noon's Magician. As always, they do a fantastic job of supporting us, allowing us to share some writing and share all this content. Christian, Steve, it's cold, it's snowy. I enjoy talking sports with y'all.
I'm the only one happy about it being cold and snowy.
I'll take the code. I'm not so thrilled about the snow.
You know, give me a couple of days, and maybe I'll feel differently about it. But for now, I'm gonna go wallow in the Steelers' loss. Go wallow in Arsenal dropping points against the 10-man Chelsea, and really hope that Syracuse does something this week. Please do something, anything. Go Orange.
Go Orange.